I got my water bottle.
Next time he goes Hodgson,
Say like,
Oh, really? Not gonna happen.
they want to say like, big side. Private jet and ride. Government created to make money. No purpose for you
Oh, God. Wait, what happened?
No. The ceiling. Do it on the intercom. I don't like it. We're not going to see No. You're graduating, it's fine.
Yeah, I don't care.
That's my last semester.
Oh, my. He's ready. Actually, I'm sure he's starting to get
And the
kicked out.
paint on it is coming off like a sketch.
I think so. Yeah.
That's why you're doing that? It's already coming off one day. This is new. I got it for Christmas.
Bro, hey, you got that's not as bad.
Somebody wrote
I've never seen this. Yeah, Jackson, what is
Andrew Yang is a New York entrepreneur who's never held political office.
Tonight he's
Why are you flexing around with that?
Couldn't see the humor in it, you know. He was just
Showing Jackson.
so that makes me feel
Yeah, his presidential speech.
we could have got like 10 of them.
Hello, how are you guys today? Good. Awesome. It's so exciting to see so many young faces here in the crowd today, to see Andrew Yang, all of you in general. I'm so glad to be here. My name's Lauren, and I'm here because I spent the last 5 years working for a successful tech startup And about 6 months ago, my job was automated, so there are now robots doing my job. Upon that happening, I started learning about automation, which led me to learn about Andrew Yang, which then led me to start looking at some of his other policies. And I realized, wow, this is the perfect candidate for me. But not just for me, he's a perfect candidate for all of us. Because his slogan is not left, not right, but forward. Which is why I urge all of you to help him get to the White House and come to me or any of the other staff members here back there at the front. We met you out there. And we will sign you guys up to get volunteered. I learned last week, one door knock is the equivalent to $240 in donations. So we'd love to have you guys, if you'd be willing, to help us get Andrew Yang in the White House. Now I'd love to introduce Larry Hodgson. He's the Senior County Democratic Chair. You give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Lauren. Welcome, everybody. It is great to see so many young people. How many of you young people have ever been, raise your hand if you've been to a political event prior to today. Okay, not a lot of you. Okay, so good. This is the start of something. Now, Iowa starts the process in our democracy of selecting the next president, whoever's going to be on the ballot for the Democratic and Republican parties next November. And a lot of you will be 18 by next November and have the opportunity to vote. This afternoon, I probably will be seeing a lot of you again up in the auditorium at 1:30 during plus time. Myself and a Republican delegate will be there to explain the caucus process, answer all of your questions, and get some of you registered to vote. So I hope you all take an opportunity to do that, because this will help you decide if you want to go to your caucus and help start the process of selecting our candidates for President of the United States next November. So I'm going to turn it over now to another area gentleman who's working for Andrew Yang, Al Wembo. He's from Wheatland, Iowa originally, and has been working for Andrew Yang. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
You know, I really love this library because the moment I first came in, I saw the book over there by Dan Gable. And you may not tell, but long, long ago, yeah, somebody likes it. I was a wrestler, and if you can't tell, I was a heavyweight wrestler. And so seeing a book on one of the greatest wrestlers who ever walked in the state, you know, kind of made me think, you know what, today is going to be a good day. But ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce a guy to you that has not only lifted up my spirits, lifted up my hope for this country, but lifted up what I think is going to be the future for my wife, myself, and my children. And that is the next president of these United States, Mr. Andrew Yang!
Hello, Tipton. I am running for student body president at Tipton High School. I have a sharp lead over my competitor, him. I don't know who's actually running. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's a thrill to be campaigning here, especially just a few days away from voting. First, we have a lot of young people here, so thank your teachers for letting me come. I think they let you skip class. That's the root of it, is that right? That's good education. How many of y'all can caucus? If you can't caucus, get out. Oh, you should definitely stay. This is about you, really, in many respects. I love campaigning here in Iowa because you all have the future of the country in your hands in just a few short days. I have done the math. Do you know how many Californian voters each Iowan caucus goer is worth? 1,000 Californians each. That's the power you all have. You're all like super voters, super powered Americans in terms of your potential to shape the future of our country. So look around this room today. How many of us are here? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 750 people here. Biggest gathering school's ever seen. I think there are about 50, 80, actually now I'm looking around, actually more than that. Let's call it 80 people here today, which would be like 2 football stadiums full of Californians. That's why I love campaigning here, because you can do something the rest of the country only dreams about, which is actually push us in a new direction. Now I'm running for president as someone who is not from DC. How many of you have seen TV advertisements for me in my campaign? Good, because we spent a lot of money on those ads. Glad you saw them. So you know I'm not a career politician, I'm an entrepreneur and problem solver. I'm running for president to help address a problem or challenge that we've been wrestling and struggling with for the last 3+ years. And it's something that, for all the attention that's been paid to it, doesn't seem to be quite understood. And that question or challenge is this: why is Donald Trump our president? Or more close to home for you all, why or how did Donald Trump win Iowa, a purple swing state, traditionally right up the middle, by almost 10 points? Now, if you turned on cable news at any point in the last several years, we've been offered a whole series of reasons why Trump is our president. I know you've seen this stuff, so go ahead and shout out like a reason that you've seen or been given. Electoral college. Jobs, we're gonna come back to that. Emails. The wall.
Economy.
Russia definitely is on the list. Fear. Hillary Clinton. DNC. Industrial Midwest, that's where I am. Racism. Media. But I'm the numbers guy, and the people that said industrial Midwest jobs, I'm on the same page. I went through the numbers, and there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting area and the movement towards Trump. The truth is this: we eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs in this country over the last number of years. And where were those jobs primarily located?
Midwest.
The industrial Midwest. So which states? Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Indiana, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. I have been to the towns in Iowa that lost their manufacturing jobs. And after the plant closed, the shopping district closed, people left, the school shrank, and that town has never recovered. I saw the same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan over the last 7 years because I ran a nonprofit that helped create thousands of jobs in those cities and states. And unfortunately, what we did to those manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Tipton? Or this part of Iowa? Stores closing. Are the stores closing around here? Yes? No? Sometimes? So someone who's seen stores closing, why do you think the stores are closing? Online shopping, that's right. I was just at a mall in Iowa the other day. The JCPenney just closed. And we all know these malls can go from cheery to spooky pretty quick. Amazon's soaking up $20 billion in business every year. How much are they paying in taxes? Zeros. That's the math. 20 billion out, 30% of stores closed. You get zero back. Most common job in the country is a retail clerk. 39-year-old woman making $8 to $12 an hour. So these changes are picking up steam. You don't think about Amazon as like robots, but Amazon is robots, because if you go to one of their fulfillment centers, you see it says robots moving things around. I'm going to call out an example that is right around the corner. When you all call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software on the other end, I'm sure you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, representative, human, until you get something on the line, right? Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, we all do that because that software is terrible. We're all like, a person still works at this company somewhere, and I will now find that person. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software will sound like this. Hello, Andrew, how are you? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, efficient. You might not even know it's software. What will that mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour? How many of you all know a truck driver here in Iowa? Yeah, it's the most common job in 29 states. 3.5 million truckers in this country, 94% men, average age 49. My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They say they're 98% on the way there. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania last month with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you'll see the story. And at the end of the route was a giant stack of pancakes. Now, I made up the pancakes, but everything else is real. What will self-driving trucks mean for the 3.5 million truck drivers in our country, or the 7 million plus Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? How many of y'all have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? Yeah, they've got a meat buffet. They say that 5,000 people stop there every day. How many people will stop there when the trucks no longer have drivers? Tipton, we're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say fourth industrial revolution?
3 seconds ago.
3 seconds ago, that's right. And I'm barely a politician. So this is what I was unpacking. Trump wins, I say, wait, stop the press. Like that's an unusual development. You know, our country doesn't ordinarily decide to take a bet on a narcissist reality TV star. So things have changed. So let me figure out how the heck that happened. I went through the numbers and said, oh, I get it. We eliminated these manufacturing jobs. All the swing states have these communities that have all turned in a different direction, frankly a negative direction, because their economy's gotten blasted away. We're going to do the same thing to the most common jobs throughout the economy over the next number of years. And so I went to our leaders in DC and I said, what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? And what do you think the folks in DC said to me when I said, what are we going to do?
I don't know.
That's a pretty good DC invitation. I like silence. The answers I got out of DC were these. Number one, Andrew, we can't talk about this. Number two, Andrew, we should study this. And number three, this will be familiar, Andrew, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you have heard that before? Now, but I'm the numbers guy. Do you want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest? On a percentage basis? This would be fun, right? 2%, that's so low. You know it's low because I'm anchoring you very low. You know it's bad because I pretty much said it's bad already. But you also know it's low because you know human beings. You know human beings don't lose their jobs and say, I'm here for my coding retraining program. That's not human nature. The success rate was 0 to 15%. The truth is these retraining programs have not worked. Almost half of the manufacturing workers in the Midwest who lost their jobs left the workforce and did not work again. Of that group, almost half filed for disability. We then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in these communities to the point where American life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row. You know the last time American life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? Great Depression is a great guess.
World War II?
World War II is also a great guess. It's the Spanish flu of 1918, the global pandemic that killed millions. You have to go back a century because it's highly unusual for your life expectancy to decline in a developed country like the US. It ordinarily goes up and up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But in the US it went down and then down and then down again. So when I said this to the folks in DC, one of them said something that brought me here to you all today. This morning, this happy Friday morning, right before the voting starts. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC will do anything about this. Because fundamentally, Washington, D.C. is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we would do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years. And that was 2 years ago, Tipton. And that's why I'm so excited to be here with you today. Because you all are that wave. On Monday, we have to rewrite the rules of this economy so that they're working for you, your families, our children, the next generation, because they are not working right now. You have $1 trillion tech company like Amazon paying less in taxes than everyone here in this room. Does that make sense to you? And whose fault is that? Is that their fault, Amazon's fault?
No, it's probably the government's fault.
It's our fault. It's Amazon's job to try and pay as little in taxes as possible. It is our job and our government's job to make sure they can't pay zero. That is what you all have to change on Monday. Now, if you're here today, you've heard at some point I have this very dramatic seeming proposal, and that's to give every American $1,000 a month starting at age 18. Raise your hand if you saw that proposal. Keep your hand up if you thought that was too good to be true, unrealistic, and not possible. All right. I understand completely. I get it. But this is not my idea and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for this at the founding of our country, citizens' dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrated last week, was fighting for this when he was killed. I met with his son and he said this was his father's vision. The guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. This was so mainstream that 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, one of the godfathers of modern economic thought, endorsed this plan in the 60s. It passed the US House of Representatives twice in '71 under Nixon, a family assistance plan. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
And how does Alaska pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A new study just came out that said that our data, your data, is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail? If your data is now worth more than oil, billions of dollars a year, and you are not seeing a dime of that money, where is it all going? Who's getting it? Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, the trillion-dollar tech companies that are paying zero or near zero back into our country. Some of you have had this sneaking feeling that there's this stuff going on behind the scenes where your community is getting depleted of value, where stuff's leaving and not coming back. The reason you felt that way is because it is that way. Raise your hand if you're a parent like me and Evelyn. And some of you are too young, I mean, hopefully not. If you're a parent, you have had this sinking feeling that we are leaving our kids a future that is less bright, less secure, and less prosperous than the lives that we have led as their parents. The reason why parents feel that way is that it's true. If you were born in the 1940s in this country, there was a 93% chance you were going to be better off than your parents were. That's the American dream. That's what brought my family here. That's what we aspire to for our kids. But if you were born in the 1990s in this country, you're down to a 50-50 shot and it's declining fast. That is why the parents feel the way we do. That is why many young people, unfortunately, feel like the deck is stacked against you in ways it was not for previous generations. It is. This is how Trump wins Iowa by almost 10 points. It's because people are not excited about our future or the future for our kids. And many of our kids feel like if they're going to lead certain types of careers, they have to leave not just our communities, but the entire state. That is what we have to change. That's what this election's about. So in this context, if you reach out and get this value that's leaving your community, going up to the cloud, Amazon, and the gang, and bring it back to you in the form of a dividend of $1,000 a month, it actually just rebalances the inequities that are getting worse and worse right now. Particularly because if you put the $1,000 a month into each of your hands, where will that money actually go? How much of it would stay right here in Iowa? Most all of it. Not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password. But most of it would go to car repairs you're putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and athletic equipment, and religious organizations. Tipton, this is the trickle-up economy from our people, families, and communities up. And this is the only way we're going to balance out what's happening between rural areas and big cities that are getting more and more out of whack all the time. I met with your state legislators in Des Moines, and the representatives from the rural areas said this is the only thing they've heard of that would actually give rural towns a path forward. Because this depletion we're talking about is even worse for many small towns and small communities, not just here in Iowa, but around the country. What I'm proposing was mainstream front and center political wisdom in the 60s and 70s and should have passed then. The reason why it feels so extremely unequal today is because we didn't solve this problem 50 years ago. We have to solve it now. Imagine a country where we could look our kids in the eyes and say, your country loves you, your country values you, and your country will invest in you and your future. That's what we need. We have to make an economy that works for you and your families, not Amazon and the big companies. Right now, our corporate profits are at record highs and our life expectancy is trending downward. Which do you listen to? If you're us, you listen to life expectancy. If you're DC, you can't even see people in life expectancy. You're just following the money. Washington, D.C. today is the richest city in our country. Think about that for a minute. What do they produce? None of us quite knows. But business is awfully good. Tipton, Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp. I want to do something a little bit different. I want to distribute the swamp. What do I mean by that? Why do you employ hundreds of thousands of government workers in the most expensive city in your country? Why wouldn't you move some of those jobs to Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa? You would save billions of dollars immediately, and I would argue those agencies would make better decisions because they were living someplace normal and not in a DC bubble where they just talk to each other all the time. I'm for term limits for members of Congress. Your representatives should be heading to DC to do your work and then come home. And I know how to pass it as your president. I'll be your president a year from now, and then I'll go to Congress and say, hey, we need 12-year term limits for all members of Congress. But, well, some of you like that. But you current lawmakers who are actually drafting this are exempt from this rule. Do you think that they'll pass that? Oh yeah, they'll pass that because it doesn't affect them. It just affects the people that come in after them. But then all of a sudden you'd have term limits very quickly that take effect on our members of Congress. And then you'd have legislators that are actually trying to vote their conscience and not trying to make a career out of staying in DC forever. These are some of the big changes we can make, but none of them matter if we're not actually improving your lives and the lives of your families. And that, to me, is why this freedom dividend and reshaping our economy are so crucial. Our economic measures are leading us off a cliff. We have record high corporate profits and GDP. What else are at record highs in the United States of America right now? Suicides, record highs. Mental illness. Student debt. You guys know we're not even in college yet. You're like looking at it, you're like already anticipating the debt. Is that really, you don't think about that. They're like in high school and they're already counting their freaking debt. But they're right. Student loan debt also record highs. What else are at record highs? Healthcare expenses, homelessness, stress, anxiety, depression, substance abuse. Record lows in the United States of America right now. Starting a business for a young person, getting married, having a child. Does this seem like a healthy country to you all? We have to stop acting like Donald Trump is the cause of all of our problems. He is not. He is a symptom of a disease that has been building up for years and even decades. And Tipton, it is up to us to start curing the disease on Monday. And I am just the Asian doctor for the job. I know how out of whack the economic numbers are in part. It's the Russians. They're always trying to interrupt my events because they know I'm coming to their guy. Oh, good. I know how out of whack our economic measures are, Tipton, because of my own family. My wife Evelyn is at home most every day with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work valued at in our economic measurements every day? She gets a 0. How about every other stay-at-home parent in our country? How about caregivers taking care of ailing loved ones? How about volunteers and activists trying to do something good? Most of our kids, coaches, and mentors are trying to make them better. Some of them are getting paid for other things, but oftentimes it's unpaid. The vast majority of artists getting a 0. Sorry, aspiring artists, but it's tough right now. One thing you don't think about, but it's really important, how about local journalists? We've had almost 2,000 local newspapers go out of business in this country over the last number of months because all of their advertising went up to the internet, and you can't run a paper on that, so the paper disappears or folds up or starts publishing once in a blue moon. 200 counties in this country don't have any local newspaper at all anymore. What doesn't work very well if you don't have local news? Democracy. Because how the heck can you vote on what's going on in your town if literally no one is covering what's going on in your town? Tipton, These are the things we're supposed to care about most in our lives. Our kids, our families, our community, our way of life, our democracy, and they're getting zeroed out one by one by one. Iowa has been ground zero for these changes for years. You saw it sweep your farms with the mechanization and consolidation of many of those agricultural jobs. Then it went to your factories, wiping out 40,000 manufacturing jobs and counting, shutting down many of those towns forever. Now it's on your main streets, closing 30% of your stores and malls, eliminating the most common job in your economy. Eventually it will be on your highways. This is where we turn it around. This is where we rewrite the rules to actually work for you and your family. That's what this election has to be about. Because if we do not do something bigger and make the economy work for you, what happens over the next 4 years? Do our kids' prospects actually get brighter? Do we start feeling better about the future? Are things going to get better where we work and live? You can change this. You alone. There is no other Iowa. This is it. There's no other mechanism to make it so that our government actually starts working for us and not the big companies that have had their run of the place for years and decades. Instead of measuring our economic progress by how our biggest companies are doing, we should be measuring our progress by how we are doing, how you are doing, how your families are doing. We should be reporting, instead of stock market prices and GDP, health and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, clean air and clean water, childhood success rates, proportion of Americans who can retire in quality circumstances. As your president, I would modernize our economic measurements to include these things so we can see what the problems are in our communities. It's impossible to solve problems if you don't even acknowledge them. And that is where we are right now as a country. We're being told how great things are, and we can tell they are not great. That's why we're being torn apart. We have to take back our government and then start actually getting to work solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected in 2016. I'm not running for president because I dreamt about being president of the United States. Those were not the conversations in the Yang household. My parents were not like, you're going to be president someday. They were more like, you're terrible, clean your room. I'm running for president because, like many of you here today, I'm a parent. I see the future that lies ahead for our kids, and it is not something I'm willing to accept for them. They deserve better. We must give them better starting on Monday. Donald Trump is our president today because he had a very simple and powerful message that was very, very easy to understand. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. Remember that? It's been a long 3 years, I know, Tipton, but it's now coming to an end. It's ending on Monday. That response did not go over well with many Americans because the problems are real. We have to acknowledge their depth and severity, but then we need real solutions that will actually move our country forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back, ring the alarm bell. Oh, drain the swamp. Tipton, we know we have to head in the other direction. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century, like climate change. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work and our value, and we have to actually invest in our kids and their future. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you all very much. You may not know this, but math is an acronym, and what does it stand for? Make America think harder. That's right. That's your job on Monday. It's your job to move this country we love so much. Not left, not right, but forward. And I know that's just where you will take us. Thank you all so much.
Guys, we're going to take a couple questions, and I got to get them on the bus. So let's start. We'll go right here in the front row. Yes, sir.
Who wants to join me on the bus? So if you didn't hear, the question was about NASA's spaceflight programs, manned human. So I've been endorsed by and am friends with Elon Musk. You guys know who Elon Musk is? So I grew up watching Apollo 13 and all these movies where NASA had the lead in helping explore space. And you saw the armies of government scientists and engineers, and you had Tom Hanks in the lab coat and like the whole thing, and I love that. Unfortunately, now the government's not really in the leadership position when it comes to this space exploration. A lot more of the talent and resources and energy have gone to Elon and Jeff Bezos' space exploration company, Blue Origin. So Jeff Bezos is worth $115 billion post-divorce. It's a statement of fact, no judgment. And he takes $1 billion a year and he invests in rocket ships to Mars as a company to do this. So there are a few of the tech titans who are now ahead of the government, frankly, in regularly sending people to space. And so to me, we have to have NASA support those efforts and also fill in gaps. Like there are certain things that these companies will not do. For example, we could really use a space telescope to see if there are any like particles and debris coming our way. And Elon's not going to spend money on that. So we should. So I'm for investing in NASA, but I unfortunately do not think that the government is ever going to reassume its leadership role in sending people to space. We're going to be supporting some of the private companies that are now doing that. But I'm glad you're a NASA fan. I've seen other people wearing the same hoodie.
Questions, sir?
That was such a cool question. Might be the first time I got it.
All right, so I consider myself a Republican. One of the ideas of yours that I find really intriguing is the freedom dividend. My question, because I support efficiency, our funds being used to actually help people, and I think the freedom dividend could possibly do that. Do you see the freedom dividend as a supplement or replacement to our already pretty generous welfare state?
Well, thank you for the thoughtful question. The freedom dividend is intended to be universal and opt-in, but if you opt in, you're choosing to forego cash and cash-like benefits from certain existing welfare programs. And when I talk to people who are recipients of our means-tested programs, many of them are frustrated that if they do better, then they lose benefits. Many of them are also receiving, frankly, less than $1,000 a month. And so most of them would dramatically prefer $1,000 in cash that was unconditional. So I think the current programs do have some really negative attributes that everyone would like to get rid of. The families who are on them, American taxpayers. Like no one wants to stifle someone's ability to go out and work, which is what some of these programs are doing right now. And one of the things that I think you'd appreciate from this perspective, we've all been conditioned for years now to think that economic value and human value are the same things. And we have to reclaim the fact that we all have intrinsic values as Americans, as citizens, and as shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world. To me, the most efficient use of resources is putting it into our hands the same way a company puts a dividend into people's hands. Where if you're a big company like Microsoft or Verizon, at some point you say, best thing we can do is start putting money to shareholders. And when they start putting money to shareholders, you know what the company never does? The company never goes to the shareholder and says, hey, let me make sure you spend this money on the right things. Like, it's never even a thought. It's like, well, you're the owner, so do what you want. So to me, the most efficient use of public resources always has to be putting it into our hands, because we're the best decision makers as to how we can improve our own lives.
Got time for one more? You were the first hand I saw in the back. Not you, sorry. Nothing personal.
What are your thoughts on private health care and getting health care to people who can't afford health care?
The numbers around our healthcare system are staggering. We are spending so much money on things that are not making us stronger in healthcare. And there's so much better we could do. So I'm for universal healthcare as a right of American citizenship. And we can 100% afford it. We're spending $3.6 trillion now, twice as much as other countries, to worse effects. I would not legislate away private insurance. Millions of Americans like their insurance plans, but they negotiated for them and gave up other things. The goal of the government has to be to provide a public option that demonstrates its quality over time so that Americans prefer it to private plans over time, but that has to be something that the government can demonstrate. It's not that we should just legislate away private insurance and say, here's your new plan. Like, that to me would be a really, really disruptive transition to attempt when you're talking about tens of millions of Americans and their private insurance plans and 18% of the economy. Like, there's no magic wand. Like, you can't just be like, hey, like, we're just gonna turn it into this, because we've had this hodgepodge of a system for decades now. The hodgepodge has really, really negative effects. And I'm gonna tell a story that might be familiar to some of you here. It's an Iowa family doctor who said to me, hey, the people in this town work for a company, they get their health insurance from the company. When they get sick, they can't work anymore. The company fires them. They lose their health insurance because they no longer are employed by that company. They are very sick. They file for Medicare or disability to try and get coverage. It takes a while. They die before that coverage kicks in. He says, I see this all the time in my town. And his main point was that we have to separate having a job and having health insurance. There are many, many disastrous impacts of having your health insurance linked to your job. One is the one that he described, but two is the fact that millions of Americans at least think about either changing jobs or even starting a new job or doing something independent, but then they freeze in their tracks because they don't know what they're going to do about their health insurance. That's a massive impediment to our dynamism and movement in this country. And it's all an historical accident. It happened because in World War II, we instituted pay caps on companies. And so the companies then said, well, how am I going to attract people? I guess I'll provide health insurance on top of my salary. And that's how we wound up with this bizarro system that's unique to the US. Now, despite the fact that this bizarro system has really, really massive problems, you can't just try and wipe it out like with a stroke of the pen. You have to try and push it in the right direction over time. But the big picture is every American should have access to health care in this country. We can totally afford it. And I know this in part because my parents bounced between here and Asia. I thought they'd enjoy seeing their grandkids more. I'm like, what's up with that? Okay, so anyway, whatever. But they are blown away by the quality and cost of healthcare where they are in Asia. And that country is nowhere near as rich as the United States of America. They walk in, they get a procedure done, they get charged $25, and they're like, that was it? Like, what just happened there? And they come back here and they were like, what? You know, like they thought that the US system was the best, and so they were like trying to jockey to retire here. But then they went there and experienced the healthcare system there, and were like, hey, it looks like might retire here instead. And on a personal level, that makes me really angry because like I really want them here so I can see them. But it also makes me angry as an American because I'm like, what? This country that has a fraction of the wealth and resource the United States of America is just like able to figure it out in a way that we cannot. As your president, I will help us figure it out, but I will get health care to every American because I've looked at the numbers and we can totally afford it. Together on Monday, 6:30 p.m. The caucus rotation is
6:30, guys. Andrew's gonna mingle for a little before he gets back on the bus, and then we're gonna take him. Thank you all so much.
You guys take the chairs back to go back. Yeah. I gotta go. There it is. I got chairs right there.
Alright, so here's the shout out deal for this one. Oh wow, FPS drop. So it looks like it's stabilized. I lowered anyway. The first person to donate $1 or more to Andrew Yang's presidential campaign in 4 minutes at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is going to get a shout out on camera from Andrew Yang. I've already announced this on Twitter. If you look here, The first person to do one hour more Andrew Yang's campaign, told community will get non-camera personalizing computer. We can track who it was. And it looks like a lot of people are excited. So
I was the first one to pop up there.
That shout out, that's how we're gonna get the shout out. Anyways, so many of you donated because if you don't already know, at midnight tonight we have an end of month FBC goal. There are no extensions on this goal. There's no extensions. We have to hit this deadline. We need to be able to go to the media and compare our January fundraising with other candidates and be like, yeah, we're better than you. We outraised you. Anyways, thank you Nathaniel for the $5 donation. Andrea. Thank you Alexander for the $30 donation. Andrea. Thank you Andy for the $5 donation. Andrea. Thank you Dominic for the $1.20 donation. Daniel with the $6 donation. Shu Wong with the $5 donation. Gordon with the $7.34 donation. Logan with the $50 donation. Mayon with the $5 donation. Tracy with the $100 donation. Thomas with the 1. Ryan with the 1. Blair with the 25. Brandon with the $8.88. Caesar with the 2020 to put Nick Andrew Yang, the president, in 2020. Brendan with the 25. Hector with the 1. Dallas with the 50. Kathleen with the 10. Kathleen donates every single day. Quan with the 25. Quan donates every single day. Anna with the 50. Storm, that's a great first name. Storm with the 10. C with the 10. Sam with the 5. Desiree, I apologize, I said that wrong, with the 1. Dawn with the $155 donation, Andrew Yang. Armando with the $5 donation, Andrew Yang. Brian with the $10 donation. Anna with the $136.92. Anna with the $8.88. Anna with the $4.20. John, I don't think I said that right. With the 5. Zengi with the $111.88.
Julian break down the PA.
John with the $100 donation. Shai Shang again with the $5 donation. Joshua with the 25. Alex with the 50. Deborah with the 50. Yo Bell with the 10. Silvestre with the 10. Jenny with the 25. Lynn with the 50. Sarah with the 9, Christopher with the 1, Patty with the 10, Ryan with the 50, Keith with the 5, James with the 10, Brandon with the 10, Carrie with the 9, Sage with the 10, Elle with the $100 donation, Andrew Yang, Yvonne with the $200 donation, Andrew Yang, Matthew with the $10 donation, Andrew Yang. That's a great first name, same as me. Nathan with the $1 donation, Andrew Yang, Lauren with the 10, David with the 25, Stephen with the 5, Dan with the 25, Jacob with the 10, McKaylee with the 50, Andre with the 5, Regine with the 25, Ken with the 10, Linda with the 100, Colleen with the 5, Maureen with the 25, Ernesto with the 10, Kevin overnight at 10:53 p.m. donated $500 to Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. Now let's reload and see where we're at. I forgot where I left off. Dominic with the $1.20, Daniel with the 6, Nathaniel with the 5, Alexander with the 30, Andy with the 5, Penny with the $1 donation, Quack with the $100 donation to Andrew Yang to make him the next president of the United States. Who can donate? Who can donate to Andrew Yang? Who can donate? He wants your money. This guy, he wants your money, is right here. He wants your money. You have to donate to him.
Listen to me, I'm gay.
Thank you, Larry, for the $5 donation, Andrew Yang. Thank you, Anna, for the $1 donation, Andrew Yang. It is 12 EST, which means a flood of donations should be going in. Let me go on my internal secure Act Blue page. Remember, every single donation through the yangname.com counts towards the $3 million FBC goal that is due at midnight EST.
I'm gay.
The similar donations came in at 12. It looks like, as of now, that'll be Anna K, getting the shout out at 12 EST for donating $1 to Andrew Yang, the first person at 12 EST. Anna
Investigate what we learn about it.
Thank you, Nick, for the $1,888 donation to Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. Nick is the donation leader, head and heels above. Nick with the $1,888 donation. Oh my gosh, Nick. Nick just donated $1,888 to Andrew Yang.
We gotta go. Matt, who we give shout outs to?
You done?
What do you need?
Could I get a shout out?
Just give me the name.
I really appreciate it.
Nick and Anna.
Hey, Nick and Anna, thank you so much. Can you feel it? 4 days away. 3 days away, man.
It's cool, man.
Oh,
We
I'm
lost
just
count
a
on day
mountain
10.
candidate. Thank you, Nick and Anna. Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys.
They're in a rush today.
What if I go, what am out of YouTube? And it's like, it ends up being hot tea posing. I have a picture.
Sometimes like blockade authentic, like
It was just a weird reaction.
Oh, did we get your cards, guys?
That's what I mean.
Bellevue is awesome. Yes. Oh, you from Seattle? I'm from Bellevue. Oh, no kidding. Okay. Oh, you guys are right. I'm sure
Hey, you can cut the feed. So guys, next town hall is at 12 EST. 12 EST, and there's Andrew getting on the bus. Oh, my brother just donated. And thank you, Andrew Skidmore, for the $10 donation to Andrew Yang through theyanggame.com. You there?